When we speak of the empath, we are not describing a simple temperament or a fashionable term for those who feel intensely. We are invoking something far older, a primal wound that runs through the fabric of the human story. The empath emerges not from luxury, but from necessity. They are the child who learned, too early, that to survive meant to silence their own song. In the tender years when authenticity should bloom, they discovered that love was conditional, that safety belonged only to those who conformed. So they became watchful. They attuned their senses to the slightest shift in the air, to the storm before it broke. They learned to soothe tempers, to absorb chaos, to be what others needed, never what they truly were. What the world now celebrates as deep sensitivity was, at its birth, an act of survival. This is the hidden truth: the empath is not merely a kind heart. They are the echo of a child who endured by erasing themselves. Such a truth unsettles. It strips away the comforting illusion that boundless empathy is always a blessing. It reveals instead the shadow beneath, a self-split between being and appeasing. I have seen this pattern in countless dreams: a small child standing at the edge of a vast house, watching the movements of towering figures, learning that to speak truth was dangerous, but to please was safe. These are not accidents of personal history. They are archetypes moving through the collective unconscious, showing us how the human spirit twists itself in the presence of overwhelming power. The empath, in essence, is the diplomat of the soul, forever negotiating peace in the battlefield of the family. But beneath their polished skill lies an unspoken sorrow, a life lived always alert, always scanning, rarely at rest. Consider how such a child learns to exist. They sense the father's fury before his voice hardens. They feel the mother's grief before a tear can fall. They step into rooms not as themselves, but as instruments finely tuned to detect danger, silence, and unspoken demands. In this vigilance, they lose touch with their own pulse. The wild spontaneity of childhood, laughter without reason, tears without shame, desires without guilt, is locked away. They stop asking, "What do I want?" and instead whisper, "What will keep me safe? What will keep them pleased?" This is the root of the empath, not a divine gift bestowed at birth, but a survival code etched into the nervous system, buried deep within the unconscious. And like every archetype, it is double-edged. In its shadow, it binds the soul to exhaustion, to self-erasure, to an endless cycle of sacrifice. In its light, it offers profound compassion, the ability to perceive what lies hidden, to heal wounds unseen. But here lies the trap. Unless the empath faces the origin of their gift, they remain a prisoner of the very strategy that once saved them. They mistake survival for purpose, compliance for love. Dreams reveal this with haunting clarity. I recall one shared by a woman many years ago. She dreamt of herself as a child before a mirror. In the reflection, she appeared not as a girl but as a servant, bowing endlessly to invisible masters. Behind her, unseen by the mirror, prowled a great lion, fierce, waiting. The dream spoke for the unconscious: behind every pleaser lives a lion, the instinct, the authenticity, the untamed power, suppressed but not gone. The empath is always this, a dreamer unaware of the beast within, living as half a self, torn between the servant they show the world and the lion that paces in their depths. The empath's inner world is not merely personal, it is archetypal. Within them, the inner masculine, the power to assert, to say no, to defend the boundaries of the self, often lies dormant, weakened by years of suppression. Meanwhile, the inner feminine, the receptive, the attuned, swells beyond measure, leaving them overexposed, hyper-aware, and perpetually overwhelmed. Thus, the empath becomes a vessel out of balance, flooded by feeling, yet deprived of the structure to contain it. Their dreams are filled with water, floods, drowning, waves crashing over fragile shores, symbols of emotions uncontained. But the psyche does not abandon its children. It sends signals, synchronicities, cracks in the facade, inner rebellions. Many empaths experience sudden outbursts of rage, startling even themselves. They erupt, then retreat in shame, believing they have betrayed their image of kindness. Yet this rage is not pathology. It is the unconscious fighting for equilibrium, the lion clawing at the door. Individuation, the journey toward wholeness, demands that the empath stop suppressing this power and instead integrate it. To face the rage, the grief, the terror buried beneath decades of compliance. To see their parents not as gods but as imperfect mortals. To mourn the childhood they never truly had, a childhood where love was earned, where authenticity was punished. This is sacred work. For the empath, it is not merely psychological, it is alchemical. It is the transmutation of survival into sovereignty, of wound into wisdom. The lion behind the mirror must be brought into the light, not as a destroyer, but as a guardian. Only then does the empath begin to feel their own strength rising, quiet, steady, and real. Why do so many empaths resist this awakening? Because the memory of childhood is not just an idea, it is imprinted in the flesh. For them, to please was to survive, to defy was to risk abandonment, chaos, even annihilation. Though the adult mind may know they are safe now, the body remembers otherwise. Deep inside lingers a quiet terror: if I stop pleasing, I will disappear. This fear keeps them bound to a life of slow self-erasure. They stay in draining relationships. They overextend until their spirit collapses. They confuse exhaustion with virtue and sacrifice with love. And yet, beneath it all, the self waits, whispering through dreams, impulses, synchronicities. I recall the dream of a man who lived his life serving everyone else. He dreamt he carried a great bowl of water through a barren desert. The bowl was so heavy it nearly broke him, yet he refused to drink. Around him stretched endless sands, and his own lips cracked with thirst. Still, he told himself, this is not for me. It is for them. This is the tragedy of the unawakened empath: they hold the water of life for others but never taste it themselves. Transformation begins the moment they dare to drink. The first sip is terrifying. It feels like betrayal, betrayal of family, of duty, of the child who believed safety came only through self-denial. But that sip is also liberation. It is the first act of individuation, the refusal to remain the servant of old ghosts. As they drink, a subtle shift occurs. The silence that once felt like death begins to feel like space. The emptiness once feared becomes fertile. And within that space, a voice long buried starts to rise, hesitant at first, then stronger: I am here. I exist. I matter. Every true awakening carries a moment of dread, the moment the empath meets the part of themselves they were taught to fear. The world told them, anger is dangerous. Desire is selfish. Power corrupts. So they buried these forces deep, locking them in the basement of the psyche. But the unconscious keeps what we reject, and what we reject becomes monstrous in our imagination. In dreams, this appears as beasts, wolves with glowing eyes, strangers breaking into the house, shadows chasing them through endless corridors. They wake trembling, unaware that the monster is their own power, disowned and demanding recognition. To integrate the shadow is to open that locked door and face what waits inside. The empath who dares to do this discovers that their anger is not a wildfire to fear, but a boundary-setting flame. Their desire is not greed, but the compass of their true path. Their so-called selfishness is simply the right to exist without apology. Carl Jung wrote that we do not become whole by chasing light, but by making the darkness conscious. For the empath, this means no longer living as the sacrificial lamb. It means allowing themselves to be, at times, unyielding, unapologetic, even feared. There is a peculiar grace in this transformation. The same person who once absorbed everyone's pain without question begins to say no, calmly, firmly, without guilt. They stop rescuing those who refuse to save themselves. They no longer barter their worth for scraps of affection. And in doing so, they cease to attract the predators who once fed on their endless giving. This is the paradox: by embracing the very traits they once suppressed, the empath becomes truly compassionate, because their compassion is no longer a wound seeking to be healed by others, but a gift freely offered from fullness. When the empath steps through this fire, they emerge transformed. Not as a hardened cynic, nor as the endless giver they once were, but as something rarer, a whole human being. Their presence carries a quiet power now. They no longer seek to be invisible, nor to be everything for everyone. They stand rooted, like an old tree, unshaken by passing storms, offering shade without losing themselves to the wind. This is the true empath, no longer a survival pattern, but a conscious force. Their sensitivity becomes a finely honed instrument rather than an open wound. They can enter the suffering of another without drowning, speak truth without cruelty, love without losing themselves. The world hungers for such people. In an age of noise and fragmentation, those who have walked through their own shadows and emerged whole become living medicine. They teach, not by preaching, but by embodying. That compassion without boundaries is consumption, that love without self-respect is bondage, that true connection arises only between those who have met themselves fully. And perhaps this is why the journey of the empath matters beyond the personal. Each one who awakens breaks an ancient pattern, the cycle of generations who gave and bled and silenced themselves to keep false peace. Each one who integrates their shadow contributes to the collective healing of humanity itself. So if you are such a soul, know this: your path is not to be the endless caretaker of others' wounds. Your path is to become whole, and from that wholeness, to offer what only you can. Not because you must. Not because you are afraid. But because it is your nature, freely chosen at last. And when you live from that place, you are no longer merely an empath. You are a creator of worlds. We live in a world that teaches sensitivity as weakness and self-erasure as love. From the earliest moments of life, many empaths are conditioned to disappear in order to survive. They become mirrors for everyone else, absorbing pain, silencing their own needs, and mistaking self-sacrifice for virtue. They grow up believing that to say no is cruel, to have boundaries is selfish, to be fully themselves is dangerous. But here is the truth: this pattern is not compassion. It is captivity. An empath who exists only to serve becomes a ghost in their own life. They pour endlessly into others, yet remain thirsty within. They carry everyone's burdens, but collapse under the weight of their own. And the world, the very world they try to save, will not rescue them. Because the world does not change when you bleed for it. The world changes when you transform within it. Carl Jung once wrote that, what you most need will be found where you least want to look. For the empath, this place is their own shadow. The buried anger they were taught to fear. The desire they were told to suppress. The strength they were shamed into hiding. When an empath dares to turn inward, to meet their own darkness with open eyes, something miraculous happens. The monster in the basement is revealed to be their power, long denied. Their anger becomes a sword of truth. Their boundaries become gates of freedom. Their love, no longer driven by fear or compulsion, becomes fierce, clear, and unbreakable. This is not the end of empathy, it is the beginning of true empathy. Because only those who are whole can love without losing themselves. Only those who have faced their own pain can hold the pain of others without drowning. To the empath reading this, you were never meant to be a sacrificial lamb. You were never meant to live on the edges of your own existence. Your task is not to carry the world on your back, it is to become fully alive within it. Drink from your own cup. Take up space. Say that no, that frees you. Speak the truth that shakes the ground. Let the world call you selfish, arrogant, even heartless, because what they really mean is that you are no longer controllable. And when you do this, you will discover a deeper, quieter strength than you have ever known. You will stop seeking permission to exist. You will stop begging for love you do not need to earn. You will become a source, not a sponge, a creator, not a martyr. The world does not need more people who silently endure. It needs those who have walked through their own fire and emerged whole. Be that person. For yourself. For all of us.